What a loser! You're claiming I'm the father? He mocked. 10 years later, he saw them again and broke down in tears, begging for a reunion. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's family. May every woman who walks through fire rise untouched in spirit, wrapped in divine favor and radiant peace. May your laughter return stronger than your pain, and your hope bloom again after every storm. You are the prayer that never fades, the light that never dies, and the song that keeps love breathing. May your heart find calm in chaos, courage in silence, and joy even in waiting. My precious family, tonight, let your love speak louder than sorrow. Your kindness keeps this family strong. A like is a seed of hope. A comment is a chain of faith. This is Mission 1000 Blessings for every woman who endures, believes, and shines despite the scars. If you carry strength in your soul, like this video, if you walk with grace and faith, comment, "I'm with Mr. Peter." The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor buzzed like wasps trapped in glass, casting shadows that seemed to mock Maria Antonia as she stood there, one hand pressed against the cold wall, the other cradling her stomach where two lives were growing. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, practiced the words in her bathroom mirror until they sounded confident, strong, unbreakable. But nothing could have prepared her for the sound of his laughter. "Ha ha ha! What a loser! You're claiming I'm the father." Tony Gunter's voice echoed through the sterile hallway, sharp enough to cut through Maria's carefully constructed courage. His green eyes, the same eyes she had once thought held promises, now glittered with something cruel and distant. He stood there in his expensive coat, his polished shoes reflecting the harsh overhead lights, and he laughed like she had just told him the funniest joke he'd ever heard. Maria's throat tightened, but she kept her spine straight. She had come here directly from her nursing school clinical rotation, still wearing her scrubs, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked exactly like what she was, a young woman trying to build something from nothing, working herself to exhaustion to create a future. Tony looked like what he was, a man who had never struggled for anything in his life, who had never had to fight for a single breath of air. "Tony, I'm telling you the truth. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't real. I'm pregnant with your babies, twins." Maria heard her own voice, steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. She had promised herself she wouldn't beg, wouldn't cry, wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. But standing there under those merciless lights, with his laughter still ringing in her ears, she felt something inside her begin to crack. Oh, this is rich. Diane Gunter stepped forward from where she had been standing behind her son, her designer handbag clutched in her manicured hands like a weapon. Tony's mother had the kind of face that belonged in society magazines, all sharp angles and calculated expressions. She looked at Maria the way someone might look at dirt tracked onto an expensive carpet. "You actually thought you could trap my son with this pathetic lie? Do you have any idea how many girls have tried this exact same scheme?" Maria's hands trembled, but she forced them still. She had met Diane once before, at a charity event, where Tony had introduced her as a friend from the community health center. Even then, she had felt the woman's judgment like ice water down her spine. But this was different. This was warfare disguised as maternal protection. Veronica Gunter, Tony's sister, laughed from her position leaning against the wall, scrolling through her phone like this was all mildly entertaining background noise. "God, Tony, you really know how to pick them." At least the last one had the decency to be from our side of town. She glanced up, her eyes raking over Maria with barely concealed disgust. "This one actually thinks we're supposed to believe she's having twins. Twins, like that makes it more believable. Next she'll be saying they're royal babies." The words hit Maria like physical blows. She had known Tony's family was wealthy, had known there would be complications, but she had believed in something she now realized was a fantasy. She had believed that love mattered more than money, that the nights they had spent together talking about their dreams meant something real, that the way he had held her and whispered promises into her hair wasn't just another lie, Rich boys told poor girls. Maria. Sweetie. Diane's voice dripped with false sympathy, the kind that felt worse than outright hatred. Let me explain something about how the world works. My son is the Gunter heir. He's going to inherit businesses, properties, responsibilities you couldn't possibly understand. Do you really think we're going to let some nursing student claim our family's legacy based on, what, a few nights of fun? Nah, it wasn't just a few nights. Maria's voice cracked despite her best efforts. Tony, tell them. Tell them about the past months. Tell them about the things you said to me. Tell them you love me. Tony's laughter died, replaced by something even worse, complete indifference. He pulled out his wallet, that expensive leather thing she had once admired, and began counting bills. You want to know what this is worth to me, Maria? This whole drama you're creating? He threw a stack of $100 bills at her feet, the money fluttering down like dying birds. Take it. Get rid of the problem. Go to a clinic. Do whatever you need to do. Just stop embarrassing yourself. Maria stared at the money scattered across the hospital floor. Each bill felt like a slap, like proof that she had been nothing more than a transaction to him. She thought about bending down, about picking up those bills and throwing them back in his face, but something stopped her. Pride, maybe, or the sudden realization that this man, this family, wasn't worth the energy it would take to hate them. You think you can pay me to kill my children? Maria's voice came out different now, not pleading or angry, but cold as winter rain. You think that's what I came here for? Money? Well, isn't it? Veronica chimed in, finally putting her phone away to give Maria her full attention. Come on. You work 3 jobs. You're drowning in student debt. You live in that terrible neighborhood on the east side. Don't pretend this isn't exactly what you wanted. A rich boyfriend, an accidental pregnancy, a lifetime meal ticket. Maria felt something shift inside her chest, something fundamental and irreversible. She looked at Tony, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The man she thought she knew, the man who had traced her face with gentle fingers and told her she was extraordinary, had never existed. This was who he really was, someone who could throw money at problems, who could laugh at a woman carrying his children, who could stand there with his family and treat her like she was garbage to be disposed of. I don't want your money. Maria's voice rang clear through the corridor, strong enough to make Diane flinch. I don't want anything from you. Not your name, not your support, not your presence in my children's lives. You just made something very clear to me. You're not a father. You're not even a man. You're just a boy who's never had to face consequences for anything in his miserable, empty life. She turned to walk away, her head high, her shoulders back. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her run. She would not let them win by watching her crumble. But Tony's voice followed her down that endless hallway, dripping with contempt. Don't come back here, with your hand out, Maria. Don't come crawling to us when reality hits, and you can't afford formula. This is your choice. You walk away now, you walk away forever. My children. He laughed again, that same cruel sound. These aren't my children. They're your problem, your mistake, your burden. Maria didn't turn around. She kept walking, kept breathing, kept moving forward, even though every step felt like walking through concrete. She made it to the parking lot, made it to her old car with its dented door and check engine light that never turned off. She sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles went white. Then she broke. The sobs came from somewhere deep and primal, tearing out of her throat like wild animals. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel and cried for the girl who had believed in fairy tales, for the woman who had thought love could bridge any gap, for the mother she was about to become with nothing but her own strength to rely on. She cried until her ribs ached, until her eyes burned, until there was nothing left inside her but emptiness. A knock on her window made her jump. Lucia stood there, her best friend since childhood, still in her coffee shop uniform, her face creased with worry. Maria had texted her an hour ago. At the hospital. Need to tell Tony about the babies. Pray for me. Maria unlocked the door, and Lucia slid into the passenger seat, taking one look at Maria's devastated face and pulling her into a fierce embrace. "What did he say?" He laughed. Maria's voice was barely a whisper. "He threw money at me, Lucia, like I was a prostitute he was paying off. His mother called me a liar. His sister called me trash. He said these babies aren't his problem. He said they're my burden." Lucia's arms tightened around her. "That bastard, that absolute piece of garbage. Maria, we're going to sue him. We're going to take everything he has. We're going to make him pay for this." But Maria pulled back, her hands moving to her stomach, where two tiny heartbeats were growing stronger every day. She wiped her eyes, smearing tears across her cheeks, and something in her expression changed. The softness that Tony had loved, the vulnerability that had made her trust him, hardened into something else, something unbreakable. "No." Maria's voice was quiet, but absolute. "We're not doing anything involving him. Not lawsuits, not child support, not angry letters, nothing. He just did me the biggest favor of my life, Lucia. He showed me exactly who he is before these babies were born, before I wasted more of my life hoping he would become someone worth knowing." But Maria, listened to me." Maria placed both hands on her stomach, feeling the slight swell where life was blooming despite the hatred she had just endured. "I'm going to raise these children without him. I'm going to finish school. I'm going to become a doctor. I'm going to build a life so incredible, so full, so successful, that they will never ever feel like they're missing anything. They won't grow up watching me cry over a man who abandoned us. They won't spend their childhood feeling like they're not enough because their father didn't want them. They're going to grow up knowing they are everything. They're going to grow up knowing their mother chose them over everything else in the world." Lucia stared at her, tears streaming down her own face. "You're really going to do this alone?" "I'm not alone. I have you. I have my mother. I have my strength. That's more than enough." Maria started her car, the engine coughing to life, and she looked at her best friend with eyes that had aged a lifetime in a single afternoon. "Those people in there, they think they won. They think they broke me. They're wrong." As she pulled out of the parking lot, Maria whispered to her unborn children, her voice fierce with promise and prophecy, "Your father just made the biggest mistake of his life, and one day, when you're grown and beautiful and unstoppable, he's going to realize exactly what he threw away." Chapter 2: The Transformation. Maria's apartment smelled like burnt coffee and stubborn determination. The walls were paper-thin, the heating unit clanged like it wanted to explode, and the bathroom faucet dripped with relentless persistence. But this cramped space with peeling paint was hers. Nobody could take that away, no matter how much money they threw at her feet. She sat surrounded by medical textbooks that cost more than groceries, her laptop balanced precariously, practice questions glowing on the screen. Her body ached in ways she hadn't imagined possible. The twins made their presence known through constant nausea, bone-deep exhaustion, and bizarre cravings that made no sense. But she pushed through, reading anatomy while her own was being rearranged by the lives inside her. Lucia had helped create a study schedule that looked more like warfare than academics. Finish nursing clinical hours, study for medical school entrance exams, work breakfast shifts at the diner, somehow sleep and eat. The schedule was insane, but sanity was a luxury she couldn't afford. Nausea hit without warning. Maria scrambled to the bathroom, barely making it, her body rejecting the crackers she'd managed earlier. This was the 4th time today. Her knees hit cold tile as she let herself cry while vomiting. Nobody was here to witness her weakness. "Baby girl, you're going to die like this." Her mother's voice came from the doorway, firm and steady. Rosalind had arrived that morning with battered suitcases and determination. She had sold her bakery, packed her entire life, and shown up ready to wage war against the world. "Mama, you didn't have to sell everything. You loved that bakery." Maria's voice was weak. "I loved you first." You think I'm letting my daughter do this alone?" Rosalind wet a washcloth, pressing it to Maria's neck with practiced maternal efficiency. "That bakery was just a building. You and these grandbabies are my real legacy." They sat on the bathroom floor together, neither speaking. Rosalind had always known when words helped and when silence was better medicine. She had raised Maria alone after her father left them with nothing but debt and broken promises. She had worked 3 jobs, taught her daughter that strength wasn't inherited but built through surviving things that should have broken you. "I'm scared, Mama." The admission was barely a whisper. "I'm scared I'm not strong enough. I'm scared I'll fail the exam. I'm scared these babies will be born and I won't know how to be what they need." Fear just proves you understand how important this is. The day you stop being scared is when you stop caring enough to do it right. Rosalind helped Maria up, guiding her to the couch, wrapping her in the old family quilt. "Now eat these crackers slowly, drink this ginger tea, then we're talking about this schedule because it's going to kill you before those babies arrive." They negotiated for an hour. Rosalind would take weekend grocery shifts. Lucia would cover afternoon elder care on clinical rotation days. Maria would keep only breakfast diner shifts. It still wasn't enough hours, but it was survivable. Maybe. The medical school entrance exam loomed like Judgment Day. Maria studied with frightening intensity. She memorized until words appeared. In dreams, until she could recite biological processes while brushing her teeth. Her nursing school classmates whispered about this pregnant girl who studied through lunch and stayed late asking questions nobody else considered. Some admired her, others thought she was delusional. The pregnancy made everything harder. Her scrubs stopped fitting. Her back ached constantly. She developed heartburn so severe she slept sitting up, textbooks propped on her enormous belly. But she kept going, kept studying, kept working, kept building the foundation for a life that would prove Tony Gunter's rejection was the best thing that ever happened. Lucia visited every evening after her coffee shop shift, bringing food she claimed were extras. They both knew she was lying, spending her own money to feed Maria. But Maria had learned to accept help without drowning in debt. Her pride had nearly killed her those first weeks. Lucia had explained brutally, "Your pride is a luxury those babies can't afford. Swallow it or starve, your choice." How was work? Lucia unpacked containers of soup and bread. Exhausting? Perfect. Maria managed a smile. "A nurse told me about a full scholarship program for medical school. Competitive? But if I score top percentile on the entrance exam, I might qualify. Full tuition, living stipend, everything." "Of course you'll qualify. You're going to destroy that exam." Lucia's confidence never wavered. "I keep thinking about what Tony said, that these babies are my burden, my mistake." Maria's hand moved to her belly. "What if he's right? What if I'm destroying my future because I was too stubborn?" "Stop!" Lucia's voice was sharp. "Those babies are not a problem. They're your children. Any man who can't see that doesn't deserve knowing them. Tony Gunter is a coward who'll spend his life wondering what he missed. You'll spend your life knowing you chose love over convenience." The words settled something in Maria's chest. She ate slowly, feeling the twins respond to nourishment with gentle movements that made her smile. These were her boys. 2 little lives depending on her completely. The responsibility was crushing but clarifying. Everything mattered now. Exam day arrived with contractions that sent panic shooting through her. Too early. The twins weren't due for another month. But the contractions faded. False labor, preparing for real birth. She made it to the testing center looking like she might deliver in the parking lot. Her belly enormous, drawing stares from candidates who wondered what she was doing there. The test was brutal, hours of questions requiring knowledge and critical thinking under pressure. Maria's back screamed, the twins kicked relentlessly. Her bladder demanded breaks every 40 minutes. but she pushed through with the focus of someone who knew failure wasn't an option. This wasn't just her future, it was Prince and Harry's future. When she finished, she sat in her car and cried. Not from failure, but from accomplishment. Pregnant with twins, working multiple jobs, studying while exhausted, she had completed the hardest test of her life. Whatever happened next, she had proved she was capable of more than anyone thought possible, more than Tony thought possible. The acceptance letter arrived on a rainy afternoon. Maria stood in her doorway, water dripping from her coat, staring at the envelope holding her future. Her hands shook as she opened it. Congratulations, full scholarship, medical school starting in the fall, everything she had fought for. She called Lucia first, screaming with joy. Then her mother, both crying so hard they couldn't speak. Then she sat on her couch, hands on her belly, telling her sons about their future. We did it, babies. Mama did it. We're going to be okay. Better than okay. We're going to be extraordinary. Labor started a week later, fast and brutal. Pain that made everything else feel like practice. Lucia drove, while Rosalind sat in back holding Maria's hand, both radiating calm despite their terror. The hospital was chaos, nurses rushing Maria to delivery, doctors discussing complications in voices that weren't quiet enough. Prince was born first, screaming with lungs that promised he'd never be ignored. The doctor placed him on Maria's chest, and she fell in love, instantly, completely, in ways that rewrote her understanding of love. Then Harry followed, quieter but determined, his face already curious about this strange world. Two perfect boys, two miracles. The hospital administrator visited the next day, the same woman who had judged Maria before. She brought forms about birth certificates. Miss Antonia, we need information about the father. Maria looked at her sons, sleeping peacefully, perfect and entirely hers. There is no father. Leave that section blank. But surely the biological father should be notified. There is no father. Maria's voice turned to ice. These boys have a mother, a grandmother, and a family that will love them more than most children dream of. That's all you need for those certificates. The administrator left, disapproval obvious but irrelevant. Maria had no space for people who couldn't understand that family wasn't defined by genetics. Family was defined by who showed up, who stayed, who loved unconditionally even when it was hard. On the twins' first birthday, an envelope arrived. Expensive paper, lawyer's address, Gunter family crest embossed on back. Maria opened it to find a contract, offering substantial payment for signing away any future claims. They were trying to buy their way out of responsibility again. Maria carried that letter to the kitchen sink, turned on the stove lighter, and watched it burn. The smoke detector went off, making the twins laugh and clap from their high chairs. Maria laughed with them, the sound echoing through the apartment that was too small but filled with more love than money could buy. This was her answer. This would always be her answer. Chapter 3. The Rise. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows of Maria's office, illuminating diplomas representing years of exhaustion and hard-won victories. Dr. Maria Antonia, pediatric surgery. The words still thrilled her, still felt like vindication. 7 years since Tony's laughter echoed in that corridor. 7 years since money scattered at her feet. 7 years since she promised herself and her unborn sons they would build something extraordinary from wreckage. Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. Dr. Antonia, the Reynolds family is here. They drove 3 hours specifically to see you. Maria gathered files and headed to the consultation room, her movements confident. Parents requested her specifically now, refused to let anyone else touch their children during surgery. She had earned that reputation through hundreds of successful procedures, through nights staying late with frightened families, through explaining complex situations in ways that gave hope without lies. The Reynolds family looked exhausted, worried parents holding each other, a sick child trying to be brave, fear sitting on all their shoulders like physical weight. Their daughter had a congenital heart defect that 3 surgeons deemed too risky. But Maria had reviewed the case extensively, consulted specialists, run simulations, until she knew every complication. This child didn't need another doctor telling her parents to prepare for the worst. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, I've studied your daughter's case carefully. The surgery is complex, but I performed similar procedures successfully. Your daughter has a real chance at normal, healthy life. I'm confident we can give her that. Maria's voice was calm but absolute. The mother started crying. Everyone else told us to consider hospice, to make her comfortable. You're the first person who's given us actual hope instead of sympathy. I don't deal in false hope. When I tell you something is possible, I mean it. Maria looked at the little girl. What's your name, sweetheart? Emma, I'm 7. I like horses and painting, and my baby brother, even though he's annoying. The girl's voice was small but determined. Excellent things to like. After we fix your heart, you'll have so much energy for horses and painting and annoying your brother that your parents might wish for the days when you needed rest. Maria smiled, watching the girl's expression shift from fear to cautious excitement. After the consultation, Maria walked through hospital corridors with satisfaction from doing work that actually mattered. Nurses greeted her with genuine warmth. Residents scrambled to learn from her. Administrators treated her with earned respect. This was her kingdom, the empire she had built from nothing, from rejection, from determination to prove being unwanted by one person didn't determine worth. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lucia. Don't forget the hospital gala tonight. You promised to actually show up instead of finding emergency surgeries to hide behind. Maria smiled. Lucia knew her too well. Knew Maria would rather perform complex procedures than make small talk with wealthy donors. But the gala funded the pediatric wing, funded research saving children's lives, funded programs helping families who couldn't afford care. She could survive one evening if it meant more children got care that saved Emma Reynolds. That evening, Maria stood in her closet trying to remember how to dress for sophistication beyond scrubs. She chose a deep emerald dress Lucia insisted she buy, elegant but understated, saying she belonged without begging validation. Her mother was watching the twins, probably feeding them too much sugar. Grandmothers operated under different rules. The Grand Sterling Hotel was everything Maria expected. Crystal chandeliers costing more than her first apartment. Marble floors polished dangerously, waiters carrying champagne like precious artifacts. Rich people in expensive clothes, laughing at unfunny jokes, networking with practiced ease. Maria walked in and immediately felt a tension. Beautiful surgeon with tragic backstory. Single mother defying odds. Self-made success. She was fascinating to these people like zoo animals, something to observe safely, exotic and slightly dangerous. Dr. Antonia! We're so grateful you could attend. The hospital administrator rushed over with a painful smile. This was the same woman who had judged Maria 7 years ago, tried pressuring her about birth certificates, treated her like she was lesser. Now she smiled like they were allies. Maria played along because it served her purpose, but never forgot who people really were. She endured an hour of introductions to donors, wanting to feel connected to her work, shaking hands with strangers who would never understand fighting for survival. They wrote checks and felt charitable, never grasping their pocket change represented resources, saving actual lives. Maria was gracious, thanked appropriately, said right things, but inside she felt hollow. These weren't her people. She'd just escaped to the bar when she heard a familiar voice. The younger generation has no respect for traditional values anymore. They think they can skip important steps and still demand recognition. Diane Gunter stood 15 feet away, holding court with women wearing wealth like armor. Maria turned slowly, her heart pounding. She hadn't seen Tony's mother in 7 years, had successfully avoided any crossing paths. But here she was, looking older but no less formidable. Designer outfit perfect, jewelry catching light, entire presence screaming money and privilege and judgment. My son is going through another broken engagement. Can you believe it? The third one. These girls don't understand what commitment means. The moment things get difficult, they run. Diane sipped champagne, shaking her head. I keep telling Tony he needs someone with substance, someone understanding family values, not these flighty creatures he keeps choosing. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. This woman who pressured her son to abandon his pregnant girlfriend now lamented his commitment issues. Maria should walk away, should not engage, should take every therapy lesson about avoiding toxic confrontations. But 7 years of controlled rage found a crack. She walked directly into Diane's circle, causing conversation to stumble into silence. Several women recognized her, eyes widening. This would be tomorrow's gossip for weeks. Maria didn't care. Diane Gunter. What an unexpected surprise! Maria's voice was pleasant with steel underneath. Diane's face cycled through shock, recognition, shame, before settling on defensive hostility. Dr. Antonia, I wasn't aware you attended these events. I attend when the cause matters. Saving children's lives matters quite a bit, as you might imagine. Maria smiled with teeth and no warmth. I couldn't help overhearing about your son's relationship struggles. How fascinating that he has commitment trouble. I wonder where he learned that particular skill. The women went silent, sensing blood, but not understanding full context. This was the kind of confrontation whispered about for months. Diane drew herself up. My son's personal life is not your concern. You're absolutely right. Just like 7 years ago, my personal life wasn't yours either. But that didn't stop you from interfering, from telling your son to abandon responsibilities, from treating me like something shameful to be erased with money. Maria's voice never rose, never lost professional pleasantness. That made it more devastating. I hope Tony finds what he's looking for. Genuine hope, actually. Because I've learned holding on to anger is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to suffer. She turned to leave, but Diane's voice stopped her. Those children you claimed were my sons, do they even exist? Maria turned back slowly, feeling something dangerous coil. My sons exist. They're brilliant, kind, confident, and have everything they need. Everything that matters. They've grown up knowing they're loved unconditionally, that they matter beyond measure, that their worth isn't determined by who wanted or didn't want them. They've never asked about their father, which tells you everything about how complete their lives are without him. I would like to meet them. As their grandmother. You're not their grandmother. Maria's voice turned to ice. You're a woman who once told me to terminate my pregnancy like it was reasonable. You're someone who looked at me carrying your grandchildren and saw only a problem to eliminate. You don't get to change your mind now that it's convenient. My sons are not here for your redemption arc. She walked away, leaving Diane standing in a circle of fascinated spectators who would definitely be calling everyone they knew. Maria made it to the bathroom before her hands started shaking. She gripped the marble sink, staring at her reflection, breathing through adrenaline. Lucia found her 10 minutes later. I heard what happened. The entire gala is talking about nothing else. You just became a legend. I shouldn't have engaged. I should have walked away. Maria pressed hands against her face. You stood up for yourself and your sons. You told truth. There's nothing wrong with that. Lucia pulled Maria's hands down, forcing eye contact. You've spent 7 years being dignified and taking the high road. Maybe it was time to remind them exactly what they lost. That night, Maria stood in her son's bedroom doorway watching them sleep. Prince sprawled across his bed, claiming territory. Harry curled up with his stuffed elephant. They were perfect. They were everything. And they were completely, entirely, beautifully hers. 7 years ago, Tony had called them a burden, thrown money at her feet, walked away laughing. Tonight, his mother stood in a ballroom surrounded by wealth and privilege, and Maria had walked away without a second glance. Because the truth was simple, Maria had won. Not because Tony came crawling back, not because his family realized their mistake, but because she had built something so strong and complete that their absence created no holes. She had crowned herself. Chapter 4. The collision emergency room chaos surrounded Maria like familiar symphony, controlled crisis of people fighting to save lives where every second mattered. She pushed through automatic doors wearing surgical scrubs from a procedure finished an hour earlier. The resident who called her was already moving toward her with a patient chart. Dr. Antonia, pediatric trauma case. Boy around 8, compound fracture of radius and ulna from playground fall. Parents specifically requesting you. Won't let anyone else examine him. He handed her the chart. Pain management. Maria's brain calculated angles and surgical approaches before seeing the patient. Stabilized, but terrified. Keeps saying he only wants the best doctor. Apparently his pediatrician told parents that's you. The resident looked slightly intimidated. The way most residents looked working with Maria. She had a reputation for being brilliant and demanding. The examination room was crowded with anxious family when Maria pushed through the curtain. The boy sat with his arm at an unnatural angle, tears streaking his face, but trying desperately to be brave. Maria immediately focused on him, making sure he saw her before medical equipment and worried adults. Hi there, champion. I'm Dr. Antonia. That arm looks like it hurts pretty badly. Maria's voice shifted into gentle tone, reserved for frightened children. Everyone says you're the best. Can you fix it? The boy's voice trembled, but his eyes held hope. I absolutely can fix it. We're taking pictures of those bones, then putting them exactly where they belong. You'll be climbing monkey bars again before you know it. Maria examined the injury gently, her clinical assessment happening while she kept him distracted. What's your name? I'm Cameron. I fell trying to do a flip because my friend said I couldn't. Cameron tried smiling through tears. Next time you want to prove someone wrong, maybe pick a challenge that doesn't involve defying gravity quite so dramatically. Maria smiled warmly, already giving orders about imaging and pre-op. Your bones are going to heal perfectly. I promise. This is going to be okay. The boy visibly relaxed, responding to confidence in Maria's voice. Children sensed authenticity instantly, could tell when adults genuinely believed what they said versus managing fear. Maria never lied to patients. When she said something would be okay, she made absolutely certain it would be. She was explaining the procedure to Cameron's parents when she felt it. That primitive awareness of being watched. Maria turned slowly, scanning the crowded emergency room, and her heart stopped. Tony Gunter stood near the waiting area, frozen mid-step, face completely drained of color. He looked older, worn in ways suggesting life hadn't been easy. His expensive suit couldn't hide exhaustion in his eyes. But Maria registered none of that in detail. What captured her attention was his expression, shock, profound enough to resemble physical pain. Their eyes met across emergency room chaos, and for one suspended moment, everything else disappeared. 7 years collapsed into nothing. Maria saw the boy who laughed at her, the man who threw money at her feet, the stranger who called her children a burden. She wondered what he saw. Probably not the terrified nursing student crying in a parking lot. Probably someone he didn't recognize at all. Then Maria turned away. She had a patient who needed her, a surgery to perform, a life to live with no space for ghosts. Whatever Tony Gunter was doing here, whatever surprise or regret was written across his face, wasn't her problem. She had more important things to focus on. Cameron's surgery took 3 hours. Maria worked with focused intensity that made her legendary, reconstructing bone fragments with precision bordering on art. Her surgical team moved in practice synchronization, anticipating her needs. This was her domain, her power, her proof she was capable of impossible things. When she emerged from the operating room, exhausted but satisfied, Cameron's family waited with desperate hope. The surgery went perfectly. Your son's arm will heal completely. He'll need physical therapy, but I expect full recovery. The family's relief was overwhelming. Maria accepted their thanks with professional warmth, explained recovery, answered every question patiently. This was why she did this work. She was walking toward her office when security intercepted her. Dr. Antonia, there's someone in the main lobby asking about you. We've tried sending him away multiple times, but he's refusing to leave. Says he'll stand there until you agree to speak with him. Given his family's connections to the hospital board, we weren't sure how to proceed." Maria's stomach tightened. She knew who it was. "Tell him I'm not available. Tell him to leave. I don't care about his connections. This is a hospital, not a social club. We've told him that. Multiple times. He's not budging." The security guard looked apologetic. "We can have him arrested, but given the politics involved, do whatever you need to make him leave. I don't want to see him. His presence disrupts hospital function." Maria's voice was ice cold, but curiosity ate at her. What could Tony possibly want after 7 years? Why was he here in her territory, disrupting her peace? Maria found herself walking to her office window, overlooking the main entrance plaza. Standing in shadows, where she could observe without being seen, Tony was pacing outside, phone pressed to his ear, body language radiating frustration and desperation. She watched him for several minutes, this man who had once been her world and was now less than a stranger. He looked lost. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lucia. "Heard Tony Gunter was spotted at your hospital. Please tell me you're not doing anything stupid." Maria typed back, "Not doing anything. He's leaving." It's handled. But then something caught her attention. The sound of children's laughter echoing from down the hall. Maria's entire body tensed because she recognized those voices instantly. Prince and Harry were here, delivered by her mother for their usual after-school visit. A routine twice a week when Maria's schedule allowed. She turned to see them running down the corridor, her mother walking behind with backpacks and lunchboxes and chaos. They were beautiful, her sons. Prince moved with careful purpose. Harry bounced with enthusiasm. They looked like perfect little humans, completely unaware they were about to collide with the man who rejected them before they existed. "Mama!" Harry saw her first and ran faster, launching himself at her with absolute faith she would catch him. Maria swept him up, opening her arm for Prince, who approached cautiously but with equal affection. "What are you troublemakers doing here so early?" Maria kissed both their heads, breathing in their scent, grounding herself. "Grandma said we could visit before homework if we promised to be extra good. Plus Prince wants to interview you for his school project about careers." Harry bounced in her arms, green eyes sparkling. Those eyes. Tony's eyes. The genetic lottery that couldn't be hidden. Maria had long since made peace that her sons carried their father's features. These eyes belonged to her children, not the man who abandoned them. She glanced back at the window. Tony was no longer on his phone. He was standing completely still, staring up at the building, and even from this distance, Maria could see something had changed. His expression shifted from frustration to something else, something that looked like shock, severe enough to stop his heart. Maria followed his gaze and felt everything inside her turn to stone. Tony wasn't staring at the building. He was staring at the window, at her, at the two boys she held close. From this angle, with afternoon light streaming through glass, he could see them clearly. Could see Prince's serious face and Harry's enthusiastic gestures. Could see their features, their eyes, the undeniable truth of their existence. She watched realization crash over him like a tidal wave. Watched his knees actually buckle. Watched him grab onto a parking meter for support. Watched his mouth form words she couldn't hear but could guess. "Mama, why is that man staring at us?" Prince had noticed Tony was looking at him with suspicious wariness. "He's nobody, baby. Just someone having a bad day. Come on, let's go to my office." Maria ushered her sons away from the window, away from their father's stare, away from the collision she had always known would eventually happen, but hoped to delay forever. Rosalind caught Maria's eye. Maria shook her head. Not now, not here, not in front of them. They made it to Maria's office and she locked the door, her hands shaking despite best efforts. Prince and Harry immediately occupied themselves with anatomical models, their young voices filling space with innocent questions about how bodies worked. Maria sat at her desk, head in her hands, trying to process what just happened. 7 years of keeping Tony away. 7 years of building a life where his absence created no holes. 7 years of careful protection had just shattered. He had seen them. He knew they existed as real children with faces and voices, and his eyes staring back. The collision had happened. Chapter 5. The Desperation. Flowers arrived at Maria's office Monday morning in an arrangement so massive it barely fit through the doorway. White roses and orchids, probably worth more than most people earned weekly, with a card, "Please, just 5 minutes. I'm begging you." Tony, Maria didn't even touch them. She called her assistant. "Send these to hospice wing. Better yet, trash. And add Tony Gunter to my block delivery list. No flowers, packages, communications from him or anyone associated with the Gunter family. But flowers kept coming. Different arrangements, different services, each ending up donated or thrown away. After the 10th arrangement in a week, Maria stopped bothering with specific instructions. Her staff knew the drill. Anything from Tony went straight to disposal. Letters started arriving midweek. Handwritten on expensive stationery, delivered through hospital mail, each pleading for conversation, understanding, 5 minutes of her time. Maria read the first one out of morbid curiosity. "Maria, seeing them destroyed me. I can't sleep. I can't function. I have children I didn't know existed walking around with my eyes. Please, let me explain. Please let me apologize. Please just acknowledge that I'm drowning. Tony!" She walked directly to her paper shredder and watched his words turn to confetti. There was something deeply satisfying about destroying his attempts to invade her peace. He thought words would fix what he broke. His desperation was his problem, not hers. Lucia found Maria in her office surrounded by shredded paper. "He called the restaurant 5 times, begging me to talk to you, to convince you to see him. I hung up every time. Block his number. Tell your manager to block his number. I'm getting a restraining order." Maria's voice was flat, emotionless in the way that meant she was vibrating with fury. "Maria, I have to say something you won't want to hear." Lucia sat carefully. He looked genuinely broken. When I finally answered to tell him to stop, he sounded like someone completely falling apart. Good. He should fall apart. He should feel every bit of pain he inflicted 7 years ago when I was pregnant and terrified, and he laughed in my face. Maria's control cracked slightly. "You're not actually suggesting I feel sorry for him. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just telling you what I observed." Lucia's voice was careful, but he did say something that bothered me. He said seeing Prince and Harry in that window, seeing how they looked at you with trust and love, broke something in him that can't be fixed. He said watching his children exist without him feels like dying slowly. He doesn't have children. He has biological offspring he rejected before they were born. There's a difference. Maria stood pacing her office. "I'm tired of his presence haunting the edges of my life. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder waiting for him to appear. I want him gone completely. Then maybe you should face him once. Tell him exactly what you think. Make absolutely certain he understands he has no place in your life. And this, once and for all." Lucia watched carefully. "Because his desperation is only going to escalate unless you shut it down, definitively." Maria wanted to argue, but knew Lucia was right. Ignoring Tony wasn't making him go away. It was feeding his obsession. She needed to face him, tell him with brutal clarity he had no path back, close this door so firmly he would never try opening it again. "Fine. 1 meeting, 15 minutes. You're coming as witness. Then I'm getting the restraining order, and he's banned from my life permanently." Maria pulled out her phone, texting her lawyer to start legal proceedings. 3 days later, Maria sat in a hospital conference room with Lucia beside her, waiting for Tony. Her hands were steady, expression controlled, but inside she felt like she was preparing for battle. This man once had power to destroy her. Now she would prove he had no power at all. Tony entered, looking worse than she expected. His expensive suit couldn't hide exhaustion, weight loss making clothes hang wrong, general appearance of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. He saw Maria and something in his face crumbled. "Maria, thank you for seeing me. I know I don't deserve..." You get 10 minutes. Not 15, 10. Then I leave and you never contact me again. Understood? Maria's voice was cold as surgery steel. Understood. Tony sat down, hands shaking. I don't know where to start. I've rehearsed this 1,000 times. Start with why you think you have any right to any of my time whatsoever. Maria crossed her arms. I don't. I have no right. No excuse, no justification for anything I did 7 years ago. Tony's voice was hoarse. But I saw them, Maria. I saw Prince and Harry. I saw my sons. And it destroyed me in ways I can't explain. They're not your sons. They're my sons. You rejected them before they existed. You don't get to claim them now, just because reality caught up. Maria's voice never rose, but every word landed like a hammer. You called them a burden. You threw money at me to make the problem go away. Why would you possibly think I'd let you anywhere near them now? I don't think that. I know you won't. I know I don't deserve to know them. But I need you to understand that seeing them, seeing what I threw away, has completely broken me. I can't sleep. I can't work. I can't function knowing those beautiful boys are walking around and I'm not allowed to... Tony's voice cracked. Not allowed to what? Be their father? You're not their father. You're a sperm donor who got cold feet and ran. Fathers show up. Fathers do the work. Fathers sacrifice for their children. You did none of those things. Maria leaned forward. Do you have any idea what the past 7 years were like? Working 3 jobs while pregnant. Studying for medical school entrance exams while dealing with all-day morning sickness. Going through labor alone because the man who got me pregnant decided I was too much trouble. I'm so sorry. I know sorry is worthless, but I don't know what else to say. I was a coward. I was weak. I let my family pressure me into the worst decision of my life. Tony was openly crying. I threw away something precious because I was scared and stupid and thought money could fix anything. I was wrong about everything. You were wrong about everything, Maria agreed, her voice hard. But being wrong doesn't earn you redemption. My sons have everything they need. They have a mother who would die for them. They have a grandmother who helps raise them. They have a family that's complete and whole. Your presence isn't necessary for their happiness. Actually, your absence is probably better. They'll never feel the rejection you're capable of. I understand that. But I'm asking you to consider that maybe, someday, when they're older, they might have questions. They might want to know their father. And I'm asking you to tell them that I'm here, that I'm sorry, that I want to be part of their lives if they'll let me. Tony's voice was desperate. You want me to tell my 7-year-old sons that their father is suddenly interested? That the man who abandoned us wants to play dad now that it's convenient? Why would I do that to them? Maria's fury was building. They're happy. They're secure. They've never asked about you because they don't feel your absence. Why would I introduce instability into their perfect lives just to make you feel better about your guilty conscience? Because everyone deserves to know where they come from. Because hiding the truth from them will eventually cause more damage. Tony's voice strengthened slightly. I'm not saying you have to let me see them now, but someday they're going to have questions, and I'm asking you to tell them the truth instead of pretending I don't exist. The truth is, you're a stranger who shares their DNA. The truth is, you had the chance to be their father and chose money over them. The truth is, you're 7 years too late. Maria stood, done with this conversation. Your 10 minutes are up. Leave my hospital. Leave my life. Stop sending flowers and letters and messages through my friends. Get a restraining order if necessary. But understand this. You will never know Prince and Harry. You will never be part of their lives. That's the consequence of your choice 7 years ago. She walked toward the door, but Tony's voice stopped her. Wallace met you, my father. He said you accepted the trust fund he set up for the boys. Maria turned back slowly. I accepted it because it benefits my sons, not because it gives your family any rights. That money sits in accounts they'll access when they're adults. It changes nothing about their relationship with you, which is none. I know. But it proves that despite everything, you're willing to do what's best for them, even when it means accepting help from people you hate. That's what a good mother does. Tony wiped his eyes roughly. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to leave a door open, even just a crack, for the possibility that someday things might be different. There is no door. There's a wall, a fortress, and you're on the wrong side permanently. Maria's voice was final, absolute. Goodbye, Tony, don't contact me again. She walked out with Lucia close behind, neither woman looking back. They made it to Maria's office before either spoke. Lucia broke the silence. You handled that perfectly. You didn't give him anything. I feel like I just went through surgery without anesthesia. Maria sank into her chair, exhausted. He looked so broken, so genuinely destroyed. Part of me wants to feel satisfied, but mostly I feel nothing. That's good. Feeling nothing means he can't hurt you anymore. But that night, lying in bed, unable to sleep, Maria found herself thinking about Tony's tears, about genuine devastation in his voice, about whether his transformation was real or manipulation. She hated that she was even considering these questions. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I'm not contacting you again. I promise. But I needed you to know. Prince has your determination in his eyes. Harry has your smile in his laugh. They're extraordinary because you made them that way. I'll live with the consequences of missing that. Thank you for raising them to be better than I ever could have been. Tony. Maria stared at the message. Then she blocked the number and deleted the text. But she couldn't delete the words from her memory. Couldn't stop thinking about Tony, watching her sons from across a playground. Close enough to observe, but too far away to be part of their lives. Chapter 6. The Awakening. Prince asked the question on a Sunday morning while Maria made pancakes, her movements automatic from years of weekend rituals. Harry was still asleep, sprawled across his bed in the boneless way only children managed. But Prince sat at the kitchen counter watching his mother with an intensity that made her nervous. "Mama, why don't I have a father?" The words came out simple and direct, no preamble, just a question that had apparently been building inside him. Maria's hands stilled over the mixing bowl. She had prepared for this moment since the twins were born, practiced responses with her therapist, promised herself she would never lie about anything important. But preparation didn't make reality easier. She set down the whisk carefully, walked around the counter and sat on the stool next to Prince so they were eye level. You do have a father. Everyone has a biological father. But your father and I knew each other before you and Harry were born, and when I told him I was pregnant, he wasn't ready to be a parent. He made a choice to not be part of our family. So I raised you both with Grandma and Auntie Lucia. That's the truth, baby. Maria's voice was steady, gentle, giving information without overwhelming him. Prince absorbed this with characteristic thoughtfulness, his brain working through implications. Did he not want us because we did something wrong? Oh, sweetheart, no. This had absolutely nothing to do with you and Harry. You weren't even born yet. His choice was about his own fears, his own limitations. It was never ever about you not being enough or lovable. Maria cupped his face, needing him to see absolute truth. You and your brother are the most wanted children in the world. I chose you over everything. Every single day I choose you. But kids at school have moms and dads. The books always show families with both. Are we different because we only have you? His voice was small, uncertain in ways Prince rarely allowed. Maria's heart cracked. Some families have two parents. Some have one. Some have grandparents raising kids, or aunts and uncles, or two moms, or two dads. There's no single way a family has to look. Her family has me, Grandma, Auntie Lucia, you and Harry. That's our family. It's different from some families, but it's not less than. It's exactly what we need. Kids talk about their dads teaching them sports or fixing things or camping. I never know what to say. I just pretend I'm not listening. Prince's voice got smaller. The image of her son feeling isolated by classmates' casual conversations made Maria's protective instinct surge. Has anyone been mean about this? Made you feel bad about our family? No, nobody's mean, but I feel like I'm keeping a secret sometimes. Like there's something different about us I can't explain. Prince leaned into his mother, letting her hold him in ways he usually said he was too big for. There's nothing wrong with us. Nothing. Our family is strong and full of love and completely whole. Any kid would be lucky to have what you and Harry have." Maria held him close, feeling his small body, wanting to absorb all his hurt. They sat like that for a long moment, neither wanting to break connection. When Prince finally pulled back, his expression had shifted into something Maria recognized: determination layered over hurt. "I don't think I want to meet him. Our father, if he didn't want us then, I don't need him now. Harry and I are fine without him." Prince's voice carried an edge of anger Maria had never heard from her gentle son. "That's your choice, baby. That's completely valid, and I support you. You don't owe him anything, including forgiveness or curiosity. If you never want to know him, that's okay." Maria meant every word, even as something in her chest tightened. Harry wandered into the kitchen then, hair sticking up in all directions, pajamas twisted around his body. "Are we having pancakes? I smell pancakes." He climbed onto a stool, oblivious to the heavy conversation. Chocolate chip pancakes coming right up. Maria returned to the stove, grateful for Harry's perfectly timed interruption that let Prince process privately. But Harry, with his inability to read emotional atmospheres, looked at his brother's serious expression. "Why does Prince look sad? Did something happen?" "I'm not sad. Just thinking about stuff." Prince's voice was carefully neutral, protecting his brother from conversations he wasn't ready for. That afternoon, while the boys were at the park with Rosalind, Maria sat with Lucia, recounting the conversation. Her best friend listened with focused attention. "He's handling it remarkably well for 7. But that anger he's carrying toward Tony worries me. That's going to grow if it's not addressed properly." Lucia sipped her coffee. "What am I supposed to do? Tell him he should give his father a chance? Tell him the man who abandoned us deserves forgiveness?" Maria's voice was defensive, sharp. "No, but you might help him understand that his anger is valid, while also making sure it doesn't consume him. Kids who grow up with too much unprocessed rage about absent parents sometimes end up damaged in ways nobody expects." Lucia paused. "I'm not saying you need to let Tony into their lives. I'm saying Prince needs tools to process feelings that aren't just fury. I'll talk to his school counselor. Maybe he needs someone neutral to work through this." Maria rubbed her temples. Days later, Harry did something that shocked everyone. Rosalind had taken the boys to a charity fun run the hospital sponsored. Maria couldn't attend due to emergency surgery, but Rosalind sent photos throughout the morning. Then her phone rang. Rosalind's voice was tight. "Maria, something happened. Harry saw Tony at the fun run. Tony was volunteering, handing out water. Harry walked right up to him and said something. They tried to stop him, but he was too fast. Maria's blood turned to ice." "What did he say?" "He said, 'My mother doesn't need you.' Then he walked away." Tony looked like Harry had physically struck him. "Just stood there holding water bottles, while my grandson walked back like nothing happened." Rosalind's voice mixed pride with concern. "Should I be worried?" "I don't know, maybe, probably." Maria felt panic rising. "Did Tony try to approach them? Did he say anything to Harry?" "No, he just stood there looking devastated, then disappeared into the crowd." "But Maria, Harry knew who Tony was. Somehow he figured it out." Rosalind's voice was gentle but concerned. "Prince is the one who told him. I heard them talking later. Prince said the man had our eyes, that he must be their father." Maria felt her carefully constructed protection shattering. Her sons knew. They had figured it out through observation and 7-year-old logic, and now they were making their own decisions. She had lost control of the narrative, and that terrified her more than anything. That night, she sat both boys down for a conversation she hadn't planned to have for years. "Grandma told me what happened at the fun run, that you saw someone and Harry said something to him." Prince and Harry exchanged glances, that twin communication without words. Finally, Prince spoke. "We figured out who our father is. The man at the hospital reading stories had the same eyes. Then we saw him at the fun run. We just knew, and you decided to confront him." Maria's voice was carefully neutral. "I wanted him to know that we don't need him. That you're enough for us. That he can't just show up and think we'll want him now. Harry's voice was fierce, protective of his mother. Was that wrong? It wasn't wrong. It was brave, but it was also something you didn't need to do. Protecting me isn't your job, baby. That's my job. Maria pulled both boys close. I need you to understand something important. Your father's presence or absence in your lives is not your responsibility. You don't need to reject him to prove you love me. You don't need to protect me from him. I'm the adult. I handle adult problems. But we wanted him to know. Prince's voice was quiet but firm. We wanted him to know that we're happy without him. And now he knows. But going forward, if you ever see him again, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to acknowledge him. You can just walk away and tell me, and I'll handle it. Maria kissed both their heads. Your only job is to be kids. To be happy and safe and loved. Everything else is my responsibility. After putting them to bed, Maria stood in their doorway watching them sleep. Her sons were growing up faster than she wanted, developing their own relationships with the father who rejected them. They were making choices about Tony without her input. The fortress she had built had cracks now, and she didn't know how to seal them without damaging her boys. Chapter 7. The Unraveling. Diane Gunter's living room looked like a magazine spread, all carefully curated elegance and expensive meaninglessness. But today the perfection felt suffocating. She sat on her pristine white sofa, pressing a handkerchief to her eyes while her makeup ran in dark streaks. Across from her, Tony looked like he hadn't slept in weeks, his eyes hollow and red-rimmed. I can't sleep, Mother. I close my eyes and I see them. Prince's serious face, Harry's bright smile. My children, my sons, walking around thinking they don't have a father because I was too much of a coward to claim them. Tony's voice cracked with the kind of pain that came from ripping open old wounds. You weren't a coward. You were protecting your future. You were making a practical decision. Diane's words sounded hollow, even to her own ears. She had been repeating these justifications for 7 years. Now, faced with her son's complete breakdown, she couldn't pretend anymore. I was a coward. We both know it. You pushed me to walk away, and I let you. I threw money at a pregnant woman like she was a problem to solve. I called my own children a burden, and now I'm reaping exactly what I sowed. Tony looked up at his mother, his eyes accusatory. You told me Maria was trying to trap me. You told me those babies probably weren't even mine. You convinced me that walking away was self-preservation. And I believed you because it was easier than being a man. Diane flinched. I thought I was protecting you. I thought she was using you for our money. I thought I was being a good mother. You were being a racist who couldn't stand the thought of your grandchildren being biracial. You were being a classist who thought someone from Maria's background wasn't worthy of our family. Don't dress it up as maternal protection. Own what you did. Tony's voice was cold now, grief hardening into something sharp. The words hung between them like poison gas. Diane wanted to argue, wanted to defend herself, but the truth sat on her chest like a stone. Everything Tony accused her of was accurate. She had looked at Maria and seen only what was lacking: the right family connections, the right background, the right skin color. She had been so certain her son deserved better, never considering that better wasn't measured by pedigree or bank accounts. I was wrong. The words came out barely above a whisper. I was so wrong. About Maria, about those boys, about what matters. I convinced myself I was protecting our family legacy, but I was just protecting my own prejudices. And now we've lost something we can never get back. Veronica burst into the room, her phone in hand, her expression furious. I can't believe you're all sitting here feeling sorry for yourselves. That woman has been refusing contact, turning Tony into a stalker. She's vindictive and cruel, and you're acting like she's the victim. She's the victim, Veronica. Can't you see that? Diane's voice rose, shocking everyone. We treated her like garbage. We told her to kill her babies. We threw money at her like she was something shameful. And when she chose to raise those children anyway, when she built an extraordinary life despite everything we did to break her, you think she's the one being vindictive? Indeed, I think she's bitter and angry and keeping innocent children from their family out of spite. Those boys are gunters. They deserve to know their father, their grandmother, their heritage. She's denying them that because she can't get over what happened. Veronica's voice was shrill, defensive. Stop! Diane stood up, her voice carrying authority that made Veronica actually close her mouth. Those boys are not Gunters. They're Antonia's. They have Maria's last name. They've never been part of this family because we rejected them before they were born. You want to be angry at someone? Be angry at us, at me, at your brother, not at the woman who survived our cruelty and raised two beautiful children alone. Oh my God, they've completely brainwashed you. Veronica looked at her mother like she was a stranger. That woman has you so twisted up in guilt that you can't see straight. Tony stood up, his movements sharp and aggressive. Get out, Veronica. Get out of this house right now. I can't listen to you defend the indefensible anymore. I'm defending our family. I'm the only one who remembers that we're supposed to stick together. Veronica's voice broke. Maria isn't an outsider. Prince and Harry aren't outsiders. They're my children, their mother's grandchildren. And the only people tearing this family apart are us, with our inability to admit we were wrong. Tony walked toward his sister, his expression harder than Diane had ever seen. You have a choice. You can evolve into someone who acknowledges reality and takes responsibility. Or you can leave and continue believing your own delusions. But I'm done pretending that we're anything other than the villains in this story. Veronica looked between her brother and mother, searching for support she had always counted on. When she found none, something in her face turned cold and distant. Fine, you want to grovel to that woman? Go ahead. But don't expect me to join you in this pathetic display. I'm proud of who we are. I'm proud of our family. And I won't apologize for that. She stormed out, the sound of the front door slamming echoing through the enormous house. Diane sank back onto the couch, suddenly looking every one of her years. I've lost her. She's so angry, so convinced she's right. I did that. I raised her to believe that our money and our name made us better than other people. It's not too late for her to learn differently. But that's her journey. Tony sat beside his mother. I've been in therapy for 2 weeks. Real therapy with someone who specializes in absent parents trying to reconnect with their children. What does the therapist say? Diane's voice was hopeful. That I'm not trying to reunite with my family. I'm trying to ease my guilt. That every action I've taken has been about making myself feel better, not about what's actually best for Prince and Harry. Tony wiped his eyes roughly. The therapist says if I really loved those boys, I would leave them alone. I would let them have their peace. I would stop disrupting their mother's life with my desperate attempts at redemption. Is that what you're going to do? Give up? Diane heard disappointment in her own voice. I don't know. Part of me thinks the therapist is right. That the most loving thing I can do is disappear completely. But another part thinks that's just more cowardice. That walking away again, even if I dress it up as noble sacrifice, is just me repeating the same pattern. Tony looked at his mother with eyes that begged for answers she didn't have. How do I know which voice to listen to? Before Diane could answer, Wallace entered the room, having overheard from the hallway. You listen to Maria. She's the only one whose opinion matters. She's the mother. She's the one who did the work, made the sacrifices, built the life those boys have. Whatever she says goes. That's how you know if you're helping or hurting. She won't talk to me. She's blocked every attempt. She got a restraining order approved this morning. I'm not allowed within 500 feet of her or the boys. Tony's voice was flat, defeated. I destroyed any chance I had when I laughed at her 7 years ago. She'll never forgive me, never give me a chance. And she's right not to. Wallace sat down, looking at his broken son with a mixture of compassion and disappointment. Then you accept that consequence. You live with the knowledge that you have children you'll never know. You work on becoming the kind of man who would have deserved to be their father, even if you never get the opportunity. You do the work anyway. That sounds like torture. Tony's laugh was bitter. It's accountability. It's what growing up looks like when you've made catastrophic mistakes. Wallace's voice was firm, but not unkind. You're not owed forgiveness. You're not owed a relationship with those boys just because you share DNA. Maria has built them a life where they're loved and secure and completely whole. Your presence isn't necessary for their happiness. Diane listened to her husband speak these hard truths and felt something shift inside her. I need to see her, Maria. I need to apologize face to face. I need her to hear me acknowledge how wrong I was. She won't see you, Mother. She wants nothing to do with any of us. Tony's voice was hollow. Then I'll write a letter. A real apology, not asking for anything. She can burn it if she wants. But I have to try. Diane stood up, her decision made. I can't fix what I broke, but I can stop pretending I didn't break it. That night, Diane sat at her desk, writing and rewriting a letter to Maria. Words felt inadequate to express the magnitude of her regret. How did you apologize for trying to convince someone to terminate a pregnancy? The paper filled with crossed-out sentences, inadequate phrases. Finally, she wrote something simple and true. Dear Maria, I was wrong about everything. I'm sorry for everything. You owe me nothing, including the courtesy of reading this letter. But I needed you to know that I see now what I couldn't see then. You are extraordinary. Your sons are extraordinary. And my family's loss is entirely our own fault. With deepest regret, Diane Gunter. She sealed the letter, addressed it, set it aside to be mailed. It wouldn't change anything, wouldn't undo damage or earn forgiveness, but it was a start toward becoming someone who could look at herself without shame. In his own room, Tony was writing pages of letters he would never send, trying to process the enormity of what he had lost. He wrote until his hand cramped and his eyes burned, and the sun started rising. None of it mattered. None of it changed reality. His sons didn't know he existed as anything more than a biological fact. Maria had erased him so completely that his absence left no hole. The Gunter family was learning what it meant to lose something infinitely valuable through their own actions. Chapter 8. The Shift. 6 months passed like water wearing down stone. Tony stopped showing up at the hospital, stopped sending flowers, stopped texting Lucia desperate pleas. Maria's world returned to its carefully constructed peace, quiet that felt earned rather than fragile. She had won. Tony Gunter had finally accepted defeat and disappeared back into whatever life existed for men who abandoned their children. But Lucia noticed something during their weekly coffee dates. You seem different lately, less on edge, like you've been sleeping better. I have been sleeping better. Without Tony's constant harassment, I can breathe again. It's been months since I've heard his name. Maria sipped her latte, her expression relaxed in a way it hadn't been for the past year. That should make you happy, but you seem almost disappointed that he gave up. Lucia studied her friend with expertise of someone who had known Maria through every phase. I'm not disappointed. I'm relieved. This is exactly what I wanted. Maria's voice was firm, but something in her eyes betrayed uncertainty. If you say so. Lucia dropped it, knowing when to push and when to let Maria work through things on her own timeline. What Maria didn't know was that Tony's silence wasn't defeat. It was transformation. He had taken his therapist's words seriously, had accepted that his pursuit of Maria and the boys was about his guilt rather than their well-being. So he stopped pursuing. Instead, he started changing. He began volunteering at the children's hospital, the same one where Maria worked, but in early morning hours when her shifts hadn't started. He read to kids recovering from surgery, helped families navigate insurance paperwork, did unglamorous work that required showing up consistently without recognition. The hospital staff didn't connect him to Dr. Antonia's personal life. They just saw a wealthy man who appeared every Tuesday and Thursday morning, quiet and helpful. Tony joined a support group for absent fathers, men who had made terrible choices and were trying to understand themselves well enough to break destructive patterns. He listened to their stories, shared his own, sat with collective shame and regret without trying to perform redemption for an audience. These men weren't trying to win back their children. They were trying to become people worthy of being called fathers, whether they ever got the chance or not. He ended the engagement his mother had been pushing, the appropriate match that checked all boxes but made him feel nothing. He moved out of the family home into a modest apartment, cutting himself off from privilege that had insulated him from consequences his entire life. He started therapy 3 times weekly, diving into the damage that had made him capable of laughing at a pregnant woman. His friends barely recognized him. The charming, careless Tony, who floated through life on family money and good looks, had been replaced by someone serious, focused, almost grim in his determination to understand how a person became capable of such cruelty. He read books on racism, on privilege, on psychology of abandonment. He educated himself about realities Maria had faced. Diane watched her son transform with a mixture of pride and sorrow. He's becoming someone I barely recognize, someone better than he was, but the cost of that growth is devastating to watch. Wallace nodded. He's doing the work, real work, not performative gestures. Whether it ever matters to Maria and the boys is irrelevant. He's doing it because it's right, not because he thinks it will earn him anything. Do you think there's any chance they'll ever let him in? Even a little? Diane's voice was small, hopeful, despite knowing hope was probably foolish. That's not our question to ask. We don't get to hope for anything from Maria. We just have to live with what we did and try to be better people going forward. Wallace's voice was kind, but firm. One morning, Rosalind was bringing the boys to the hospital for their usual visit to Maria's office when something unusual happened. They arrived early because Prince had a school project about medical careers and wanted to interview his mother. In the pediatric wing waiting area, they encountered Tony reading to a small group of recovering children. Rosalind recognized him immediately. She had seen photos, heard descriptions, memorized the face of the man who had hurt her daughter so deeply. She froze, instinctively positioning herself between Tony and her grandsons. But Prince and Harry were already moving closer, drawn by the sound of an animated voice reading a story about dragons. Tony didn't notice them at first. He was fully engaged with his young audience, doing different voices for each character, making children laugh despite their injuries and illnesses. He looked different than Rosalind expected, tired, older, more human than the monster she had built in her mind. Then he glanced up and saw Prince and Harry standing at the edge of the group, their green eyes wide with interest. Rosalind watched something complex and painful move across Tony's face. Recognition, grief, wonder, love. He looked at his sons the way parents look at miracles. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then Harry, with characteristic friendliness, asked, "What happens next in the story? Does the dragon learn to be nice?" Tony's voice caught in his throat. He had to clear it twice before answering. The dragon learns that being strong doesn't mean being scary. That real power is protecting people instead of frightening them. That's a good lesson. Most stories about dragons get that wrong. Prince's voice was cautious, analytical. You're absolutely right. Most stories do get that wrong. Tony smiled, the expression achingly genuine. Are you here visiting someone? Our mother works here. She's a doctor. The best doctor. Harry announced this with absolute confidence, pride radiating. I've heard about her. Everyone says she's extraordinary. Tony's eyes filled with tears he couldn't quite hide. You must be very proud of her. We are. She's the most amazing person in the whole world. Prince stepped closer to his grandmother, some instinct telling him this stranger was significant in ways he didn't understand. Rosalind found her voice then. Boys, we should go find your mother. We're going to be late. She herded them toward the elevator. As they waited for doors to open, Harry turned back and waved at Tony. Bye. You're really good at reading stories. Tony waved back, his face crumbling the moment elevator doors closed. Rosalind saw it happen. Saw this man who had once been so cavalier completely break down in a hospital waiting room. She should have felt satisfaction. Instead, she felt something uncomfortably close to pity. When they reached Maria's office, Rosalind debated whether to tell her daughter about the encounter. Maria was reviewing patient files, looking calm and content. Rosalind decided to say nothing. The moment had passed without incident. The boys had no idea who they'd been talking to. There was no reason to disrupt Maria's peace, but that night, Prince asked his grandmother a question that stopped her heart. "Grandma, that man reading stories this morning, he looked really sad when Harry said Mama is the most amazing person. Why would that make someone sad?" Rosalind chose words carefully. Sometimes adults have complicated feelings about things that don't make sense to kids. He was probably thinking about his own life, not anything you said. "I think he knows Mama. I think maybe he used to know her a long time ago, and something bad happened, and now he's sad about it." Prince's perceptiveness was both gift and challenge. "He had the same eyes as me and Harry. Did you notice that?" Rosalind's breath caught. "What makes you think that?" "I just noticed. Lots of people have green eyes, though. It probably doesn't mean anything." Prince went back to homework, seemingly satisfied. But Rosalind knew her grandson, knew he had made a connection he wouldn't forget. Anew, Maria's carefully constructed wall had developed a crack. That weekend, Maria received a letter from the hospital administrator. Tony Gunter had made a substantial anonymous donation to the pediatric wing, designated specifically for families who couldn't afford their children's medical care. The donation came with no conditions, no publicity requirements, no requests for recognition, just money that would change lives. Maria stared at the notification, confused by emotions she didn't want to name. This wasn't the Tony she remembered. The Tony who rejected her wouldn't have understood struggles of families drowning in medical debt, wouldn't have cared about children who weren't useful to him. "What are you thinking about?" Lucia found Maria in her office, the donation letter in hand. "And I'm thinking that people don't change this fundamentally. I'm thinking this is another manipulation." Maria's voice lacked conviction. Or maybe he actually grew up. Maybe realizing he abandoned his children broke something in him that needed breaking. Maybe he's finally becoming the person he should have been 7 years ago. Lucia sat down. Would it be so terrible if he changed? Yes, because if he's genuinely changed, if he's actually become someone decent, then I have to reconsider everything. I have to acknowledge that my sons might benefit from knowing him. I have to face the possibility that my anger is hurting them more than protecting them. Maria's hands shook slightly. It's so much easier when he's the villain. Life is rarely that simple, though. People can be multiple things at once. He can be both the coward who abandoned you and someone genuinely trying to become better. Lucia's voice was gentle but challenging. The question isn't whether he's changed. The question is, what's best for Prince and Harry? And only you can answer that. Maria sat with that question for weeks. She watched Tony from a distance when he volunteered, saw the way he interacted with children, noticed the sadness that seemed to permanently inhabit his features. She investigated his life in small ways, discovering he had left his family's empire, had moved to modest apartment, had changed everything. None of it proved anything. Changed behavior wasn't the same as changed character, but it was something she couldn't ignore anymore. Chapter 9. The Confrontation. The bench in the park was old wood, worn smooth by thousands of people sitting in this exact spot over the years. Maria had chosen it carefully when she finally agreed to meet Tony, needing neutral ground that held no memories, no history, nothing except possibility of conversation. It was the same park where she used to bring Prince and Harry as babies, when they were small enough to fit in a double stroller, and the future felt both terrifying and full of promise. Tony arrived exactly on time, walking toward her with visible trepidation. He looked different than she remembered. Not just older, but fundamentally altered in ways beyond physical appearance. He sat on the opposite end of the bench, maintaining careful distance, his body language screaming he understood how fragile this moment was. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. I know you didn't have to." His voice was quiet, respectful, none of the entitled confidence she remembered. "I'm not here to give you absolution. I'm not here to tell you everything's forgiven. I'm here because I need to say things I've been carrying too long, and you're going to sit here and listen to every word." Maria's voice was steady, controlled, sharp as surgical steel. "I understand. I'll listen to whatever you need to say." Tony nodded, his hands clasped between his knees. Maria had prepared for this conversation for weeks, had written speeches, and practiced delivery, had imagined every possible version of this confrontation. But now that it was happening, she found herself saying things she hadn't planned, truths erupting from places she didn't know still existed. "You laughed at me. When I told you I was pregnant with your children, you stood in that hospital corridor with your mother and your sister, and you laughed like I had told you a joke. Do you remember that? Do you remember the sound of your own laughter echoing while I stood there with my hand on my stomach, trying not to collapse?" Maria's voice started to shake, years of controlled fury cracking through professional calm. I remember everything, every word I said, every moment, every choice that destroyed something precious." Tony's voice was hoarse. "I've replayed that day 1,000 times, wished I could go back, wished I could be someone different. But I can't. All I can do is acknowledge that I failed you in every possible way. You failed yourself more than you failed me. I survived. I thrived. I built an extraordinary life from your rejection. But you lost 7 years of knowing your children. You lost watching them grow, seeing their first steps, hearing their first words, being there for their first days of school. You lost everything that makes life worth living, and you did it to yourself." Maria's voice was cold now, clinical. "I don't need your apology. I don't need your regret. I need you to understand that what you destroyed wasn't my life. It was yours. I know that now. I understand that the person I hurt most was myself." Tony wiped his eyes with shaking hands. "But watching you walk away that day, watching you choose our children over everything, was the bravest thing I've ever witnessed. And I was too stupid and cowardly to see it." "Brave?" Maria laughed bitterly. "I wasn't brave, I was terrified. I was alone. I was working 3 jobs while pregnant with twins. I was studying for medical school entrance exams while throwing up multiple times a day. I was going through labor, knowing the man who got me pregnant had called my babies a burden. There was nothing brave about any of that. It was survival. You turned survival into triumph. You became an extraordinary doctor. You raised 2 incredible boys who are confident and kind and completely secure. You built something from nothing, and you did it alone. That's not just survival, that's heroism." Tony's voice broke. "And I missed all of it because I was a coward. You missed all of it because you chose to miss it. Don't rewrite history to make yourself more sympathetic. You had choices at every step, and you chose wrong every single time." Maria stood up, pacing now, unable to sit still. "You chose your family's approval over your children. You chose money over responsibility. You chose comfort over doing the right thing. Those were your choices, Tony. Own them." "I do own them. Every single one. And I'm begging you to tell me if there's any path forward, any way I can be part of their lives, even in the smallest way." Tony stood too, his voice desperate. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance." "A chance at what? Being their father? You're not their father. You're a biological connection. Fathers show up. Fathers do the work. Fathers make sacrifices. What have you sacrificed?" Maria's voice was rising now, professional control slipping. I've sacrificed 7 years trying to become someone worthy of them. I've been in therapy 3 times a week. I've volunteered at children's hospitals. I've educated myself about the privilege that made me so callous. I've ended relationships that didn't challenge me to be better. I've done everything I can think of to become someone different than who I was. Tony's voice was raw, honest. I know it's not enough. I know it will never be enough, but I'm asking you to acknowledge that I'm trying. Maria stopped pacing, turning to face him directly. You want me to acknowledge that you're trying? Fine, I acknowledge it. You're trying to become the person you should have been 7 years ago. Congratulations, you're finally growing up. But that doesn't earn you access to my sons. That doesn't erase what you did. That doesn't make you their father. I know. But they're going to grow up. They're going to have questions. They're going to want to know where they came from. And when that day comes, I'm asking you to tell them that I'm here. That I'm sorry. That I want to know them, if they'll let me. Tony's voice was quiet now, resigned. I'm not asking you to decide for them. I'm asking you to give them the choice when they're ready. Maria felt something shift inside her, something she didn't want to acknowledge. You want me to tell my sons about the man who rejected them? You want me to introduce pain into their perfect lives just so you feel less guilty? No. I want you to tell them the truth. That their father wasn't ready to be a parent. That he made terrible choices. That he spent years trying to understand how he became capable of such cruelty. That he's here, waiting, if they ever want to know him, but that their mother is extraordinary and gave them everything they needed. Tony's voice strengthened. I want them to have the choice I never gave you, the choice to decide for themselves what kind of relationship, if any, they want with me. They're 7 years old, Tony. They're not ready for these kinds of choices. Maria felt tears burning. Behind her eyes, the first tears she had shed over Tony in years. Then tell them when they're ready, when they're 10, when they're 15, when they're adults. I'm not asking for access now. I'm asking you to leave a door open, even if it stays closed for years, even if it stays closed forever. Tony looked at her with such raw vulnerability that Maria felt something crack in her carefully maintained anger. I'm asking you to give them agency over their own lives. Something I failed to give you. The words hung between them, heavy with implications Maria wasn't ready to process. She thought about Prince and Harry, about their questions, about their right to know their own story. She thought about the man sitting across from her, broken but genuine in ways the old Tony never was. She thought about whether her anger was protecting her sons or protecting herself. I need time. I need to think about this without you pressuring me, without you haunting the edges of my life. Maria's voice was tired now, exhausted from carrying this conversation. I'm not promising anything. I'm not agreeing to anything, but I'll think about what you've said. That's all I'm asking. Time, consideration, nothing more. Tony stood, making no move to approach her. Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for raising our sons to be better than I was. They're not our sons. They're my sons. Maria's voice was sharp again, protective. You're right. They're your sons. You earned that. I lost that right 7 years ago. Tony started to walk away, then turned back. For what it's worth, seeing you today, seeing who you've become, I'm not surprised. You were always stronger than anyone gave you credit for. I just wish I'd been smart enough to see it when it mattered. He walked away then, and Maria let him go, sinking back onto the bench with her head in her hands. This conversation hadn't resolved anything, hadn't made anything easier, but it had changed something fundamental. Tony wasn't the cardboard villain anymore. He was a human who had made catastrophic mistakes and was genuinely trying to become better. That complexity made everything harder. Maria sat on that bench as the sun set, thinking about her sons, about their future, about whether she had the right to make decisions for them forever or whether she needed to trust them to eventually make their own choices. She didn't have answers. She only had questions that would keep her awake for months. Finally, she stood up and walked to her car. Tomorrow, she would talk to her therapist. Tomorrow, she would consider possibilities she had never allowed herself to consider. Tomorrow, she would face the reality that protecting her sons might mean something different than she thought. Tonight, she would go home and hold Prince and Harry close, and remind herself that whatever she decided, it would be because she loved them more than she hated Tony. Chapter 10. The Beginning. The school talent show was held in a gymnasium transformed with makeshift stage lights and nervous excitement. Maria sat in the third row, surrounded by other parents, Rosalind on one side, Lucia on the other. Her sons were backstage preparing for their performances, and Maria felt the familiar mixture of pride and anxiety that came with watching her children step into spotlights. Prince was performing first. A chess exhibition match against the school's chess club advisor, a demonstration of strategic thinking that had won him regional competitions. Harry was displaying his artwork, paintings that showed a 7-year-old's perspective on the world with surprising depth and creativity. Both boys had prepared for weeks, their excitement building as the date approached. The auditorium lights dimmed, and Maria's heart swelled as Prince walked onto the stage, his small figure radiating confidence. He sat across from his opponent and for 15 minutes demonstrated chess mastery that made the audience murmur with appreciation. Every move was calculated, thoughtful, brilliant. When he delivered checkmate, the crowd erupted in applause. Maria's eyes filled with tears. This was her son. This brilliant, careful, extraordinary boy was hers. Harry's art display came next, his paintings arranged on easels around the stage while he explained each one. He talked about color and emotion and why he chose certain subjects with an enthusiasm that made people smile. His joy was infectious, his creativity undeniable. Maria felt pride so intense it was almost painful. These were her boys. These perfect humans who had never known their worth was questioned, who had grown up secure and loved and completely whole. The performances ended and families flooded the gymnasium, congratulating children and teachers. Maria made her way backstage, where Prince and Harry were waiting, both their faces flushed with accomplishment. "You were both magnificent. I'm so proud of you I could burst." Maria hugged them both, breathing in their familiar scent, feeling their solid presence. "Did you see when I got the rook sacrifice? Coach didn't expect that." Prince's excitement was rare and precious. "And did you see how many people looked at my dragon painting? Everyone loved it." Harry bounced with his characteristic energy. "I saw everything." "You were both perfect." Maria kissed both their heads. As they walked toward the exit, Maria saw him. Tony stood in the back of the gymnasium, partially hidden by a pillar, his face wet with tears. He must have bought a ticket, must have sat in the back where he wouldn't be noticed, must have watched his sons perform with the knowledge that he had no right to be there. Maria stopped walking. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other across the crowded gymnasium. Tony didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't move. He just stood there, with tears streaming down his face, acknowledging that he had witnessed something beautiful that didn't belong to him. Then Harry noticed him, and in a moment of pure childish impulse, unprompted by anyone, Harry waved. Just a small wave, the kind children give to friendly strangers. Tony waved back, his face crumbling with emotion that was too raw to witness. Prince saw the exchange, his expression unreadable. He didn't wave, but he didn't look away either. He simply observed, processing in his careful, analytical way. Maria felt Rosalind and Lucia tense beside her, ready to intervene if necessary. But Maria held up a hand, stopping them. This moment, whatever it was, belonged to her sons now. Not to her, not to Tony, to Prince and Harry, who were seeing their biological father for who he really was. A sad man, watching from a distance. Broken by his own choices, they left the gymnasium. The boys chattering about performances and classmates' reactions. Tony didn't follow, didn't try to approach. He simply stood in that gymnasium watching them leave, respecting the boundaries Maria had set. That night, after putting the boys to bed, Maria found a note that had been slipped into her coat pocket, probably when she wasn't looking. Tony's handwriting, they're extraordinary. Thank you for tonight. I won't intrude again, but I'll always be here if they ever want to find me. Good day. Maria held the note for a long time, then folded it carefully and put it in a locked box in her closet. A box that contained the twins' birth certificates, their first hospital bracelets, photographs from their early years. A box of memories and important documents. Someday, if Prince and Harry asked questions, if they wanted to know their full story, she would give them this note. She would give them the choice Tony had mentioned in the park, but that was for someday. For when they were older and ready and capable of making their own decisions. Tonight, they were 7-year-old boys who had performed beautifully and were now sleeping peacefully in their beds. Maria walked to their bedroom doorway, her nightly ritual of watching them sleep. Prince sprawled across his bed, claiming territory. Harry curled up with his falling-apart elephant. They were perfect. They were everything, and they were hers. The camera panned to show a photo on their bedroom wall, the three of them on vacation last summer, laughing on a beach, radiating joy. Whatever happened with Tony in the future was a choice her sons would make when they were ready. But Maria's story wasn't about him anymore. It never really was. She hadn't needed his return to become a queen. She had crowned herself years ago in a hospital parking lot when she chose her unborn children over everything else. The mockery that had nearly destroyed her had instead forged her into something unbreakable, and Prince and Harry would grow up knowing that love wasn't about who stayed or who left. Love was about showing up every single day and choosing your people over comfort, over pride, over fear. Maria turned off the hallway light, leaving her sons sleeping peacefully. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, new moments requiring strength she would somehow find. But tonight, in this quiet house filled with more love than money could buy, Maria Antonia knew she had won. Not because Tony came back, not because his family regretted their choices, but because she had built a life so beautiful and complete that their absence created no holes. She had promised those unborn children 7 years ago that their father's rejection would be his loss, not theirs. She had kept that promise, and whatever the future held, that would never change.